In a quiet home marked by
Look what he
loss,
got
a
me!
father's world is shaken when his daughter announces her
Miss you so
engagement
much, my
to
love.
the heir of a powerful,
Every day
scandal-ridden
is empty
family.
without you.
Haunted by
I've
betrayal
always
from
been
their
aware some people are
empire,
just born with
he
it.
hides his
Of course,
true
Justin, we all
identity
know.
as a billionaire, choosing instead to watch from the shadows. But on the wedding night, truth collides with illusion. Before hundreds of eyes, arrogance and greed are stripped bare, and love itself is put on trial.
I will not
In
stand
the
by
end,
and watch this
one
company
question
crumble.
remains. Is she stepping into a golden cage or breaking free into the love she truly deserves?
The front door burst open with such force that my reading glasses nearly slipped from the edge of my nose. Emily, my only daughter, practically flew into the living room, her cheeks flush pink from the crisp March evening air. Her teacher's cardigan was hanging loosely off one shoulder, hair tousled from the wind and eyes sparkling with excitement. "Dad, I'm engaged! Justin proposed!" she announced, her voice trembling between laughter and tears of joy. She thrust her left hand toward me, a modest diamond catching the golden glow of my reading lamp. For a moment, I simply stared at the ring, stunned. The diamond was small compared to the flashy engagement stones I'd seen at corporate galas, but the way Emily's hand shook told me this ring meant more to her than size or brilliance ever could. She was vibrating with happiness, every inch of her glowing with youthful anticipation. I set down my newspaper, the evening crossword left half-finished, and rose from my worn leather chair. My arms opened instinctively. "Emily, sweetheart." I pulled her into an embrace, feeling her body practically quiver against mine. "When did this happen?" "Tonight. After school, he picked me up and drove me to Miller Park. He got down on one knee right under the old oak tree where we had our first picnic." Her words tumbled out so quickly she barely stopped to breathe. "Dad, I'm so happy I could burst." I held her at arm's length, searching her radiant face. 28 years old, yet to me she still looked like the little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard. The same bright eyes, the same smile that echoed her mother Catherine, the woman I'd loved and lost 7 years ago. "Show me his picture," I said carefully, as Emily fumbled for her phone. She scrolled quickly, then held the screen out proudly. "Here, Dad, look! Isn't he handsome?" I adjusted my glasses. A young man with perfectly styled brown hair, a confident grin, and what looked like an expensive suit stared back at me. His name sat just below the photo, Justin Whitmore. My weathered hands tightened around the phone. That name was all too familiar. The Whitmores, a family name whispered in boardrooms and splashed across headlines, tied to corruption scandals, mysterious legal disappearances, and reputation-ruining affairs. Emily had no idea about my business empire. To her, I was just Dad, a retired nobody on Social Security, living in a modest 2-story house. But to me, the Whitmores were more than just wealthy socialites. They were dangerous. "Emily," I began, my voice lower, heavier. "Are you sure about this family?" Her smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "Justin's last name," I said slowly, memories flooding back. Corporate lawsuits, secret settlements, the kind of quiet scandals money could buy. "Emily, the Whitmores have a reputation. Their son's drunk driving case that disappeared from court, Margaret Whitmore's affair that blew apart 2 marriages, their business dealings, shady at best." Emily's face hardened. She snatched the phone back, clutching it to her chest like a shield. "How can you say that without even knowing him? Justin isn't his family. He loves me." "Sweetheart, I'm just concerned." "Concerned about what? That someone actually wants to marry your daughter?" Her voice rose, sharp with anger. "Justin chose me, Dad. Me, a simple elementary school teacher. He could have had anyone, but he chose me." I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. I'd faced ruthless corporate rivals, manipulative investors, men who would bleed companies dry without losing a night's sleep. None of them had wounded me the way my daughter's words just had. Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. "I came here thinking you'd be happy for me, that you'd celebrate with me, but all you can do is judge." Before I could stop her, she grabbed her purse and turned toward the door. "I thought you'd be thrilled I found happiness, but maybe you don't know how to be happy for me anymore." Her footsteps echoed down the hall. The door slammed shut with a finality that shook the entire house. And just like that, my living room, once filled with Emily's joy, was hollow again. The old mantel clock ticked loudly in the silence. On the mantel, Catherine's smiling photograph looked down at me, her eyes filled with the same warmth I'd just seen in our daughters, now clouded with tears. I sank back into my chair, head in my hands. I wanted to protect Emily, but maybe, just maybe, I'd just pushed her away instead. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss.
The sound of Emily's car engine faded down Maple Street, leaving behind a silence so thick it pressed against my chest. I sat motionless in my chair, the old crossword puzzle still spread across the armrest, mocking me with half-filled blanks. Father's mistake, 6 letters. I could think of several. Pride, silence, control. Each one felt like a dagger. Across the room, Catherine's wedding photograph gleamed in the low lamplight. Her smile was as bright as the day we'd posed outside St. Mark's, her veil catching the afternoon breeze. I lifted the frame with trembling hands. "What would you have done, Cat?" I whispered. I knew the answer even as I asked. Catherine would have handled this differently, softer, gentler. She would have invited Justin over for dinner, asked careful questions, watched him with those sharp eyes of hers until she reached her own conclusion. Me? I had dropped names, accusations, and scandals like a hammer on my daughter's fragile joy. The clock chimed 9 times. Emily was probably at Justin's apartment now, crying on his shoulder, repeating my cruel words about his family. If Justin had any manipulative streak in him, and everything I knew about the Whitmores suggested he did, he would use this moment to drive a wedge between us. I leaned back into the chair, staring at the ceiling. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Justin truly loved her. Maybe he was different from his family. Catherine had always said I was too suspicious, that years of corporate battles had trained me to see enemies in every corner. But then again, Catherine had never sat across from a man like Robert Whitmore in a boardroom, never watched him twist a handshake into a trap. The memory burned as vividly as if it had happened yesterday. A real estate deal in Chicago. Robert Whitmore had smiled across the table, promised partnership, then gutted my firm behind closed doors. I had beaten him in the end, but not without scars. And now his son, Robert's arrogant heir, wanted to marry my daughter? No. The thought curdled in my stomach. Still, the echo of Emily's voice, "You ruin everything," haunted me. I could face hostile takeovers, but not my little girl shutting me out of her life. I forced myself up from the chair, poured a glass of water at the kitchen sink, and let the cold liquid burn down my throat. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, the neighborhood quieted for the night. Porch lights flicking on, dogs barking faintly in the distance, families settling into comfortable routines. And here I was, pacing an empty house, replaying every mistake I'd just made. I wanted to call her, to apologize, to take it all back. My fingers hovered over the cordless phone on the counter. Her number burned into my muscle memory. But what would I say? That I was sorry for telling the truth? That I didn't mean it when I said her fiancé's family was toxic? I set the phone down and rubbed my temples. Catherine's voice from some long-ago parenting argument echoed in my mind. "William, you can't protect her from everything.
Sometimes you have to let her stumble. Sometimes you have to trust she'll get back up. But this didn't feel like a stumble. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. The next morning, I tried to distract myself with the paper and a strong pot of coffee, but the words blurred, the caffeine only fueling my anxiety. Every car that passed the house made me wonder if Emily would walk through the door, arms crossed, ready to forgive or to say goodbye for good. Instead, my phone buzzed with a text, just one line from Emily. "I need space. Please don't call." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. My chest ached. For years, Emily had called me nearly every evening, her cheerful chatter brightening my solitude. Now that lifeline had been severed with a single sentence. The days that followed stretched like gray fog. I went through motions, reading, mowing the lawn, paying bills, but every moment was colored by the absence of her voice. The house creaked with loneliness. Even the photo of Catherine on the mantel seemed to watch me with silent reproach. One evening, I stood at the window watching the Hendersons across the street. They were gardening together, laughing as they argued about where to plant marigolds. 43 years of marriage, and they still moved in easy harmony. That was what I wanted for Emily. A partner who respected her, cherished her, shared her burdens, not someone who saw her as a trophy to parade. My fists clenched at my sides. If Justin was like his father, if he carried even a fraction of that arrogance and cruelty, he would grind down Emily's bright spirit year by year until nothing of her joy remained. I couldn't let that happen. And yet, Catherine's words haunted me still. Let her stumble. Be there to catch her. Was I protecting Emily or just controlling her? I didn't have the answer. But I knew one thing. I couldn't sit by and watch blindly. If Justin was a good man, he'd prove it. If he wasn't, I'd expose him, quietly, carefully, before he could destroy my daughter's happiness. I walked to my bedroom closet and pushed aside the pressed suits and polished shoes. My hand landed on an old cardigan Catherine had knitted years ago. Worn, frayed, smelling faintly of lavender. If I wanted to see Justin's true character, I would need to look the part. Not as William Stone, businessman, but as William Stone, a modest retiree with nothing to offer but love for his daughter. The decision crystallized. If Justin Whitmore was worthy of Emily, he'd show it when he thought no one important was watching. And if he wasn't, I'd know soon enough.
Saturday evening arrived with the kind of soft spring twilight that made Bloomington's maple-lined streets glow like embers. I stood in front of the bedroom mirror, two outfits laid out on the bed behind me. On the left, a charcoal suit, Italian leather shoes, and the platinum Rolex I had gifted myself after my first $1 million deal. On the right, faded jeans, a button-down with a missing top button, and scuffed work boots I'd owned since Emily was in high school. I chose the latter. The frayed shirt felt foreign against my skin after years of tailored clothing, but it was the disguise I needed. Tonight, I wasn't William Stone the businessman. I was William Stone the modest retiree, ordinary, unthreatening, powerless. The 10-year-old Toyota Camry coughed to life as I turned the key. I passed the garage where my BMW and Mercedes slept under tarps, hidden for years from Emily. She truly believed I'd sold them to cover Catherine's medical bills. That lie weighed heavy, but tonight it served my purpose. Bella Vista, a modest family restaurant on the edge of town, buzzed with the chatter of young couples and retired teachers splurging on a night out. Inside, the decor was warm, with checkered tablecloths and vintage jazz humming softly from the speakers. It was the kind of place I used to take Emily for father-daughter dinners when she was little. Affordable, cheerful, honest. I spotted Emily's familiar red hair across the room. She was waving enthusiastically, her face glowing with anticipation. Beside her sat a young man in a tailored navy suit, posture relaxed, but eyes sharp. Justin Whitmore. Dad! Emily leapt up, hugging me tightly. Lavender perfume clung to her hair, the same brand Catherine used to wear. I kissed her forehead and looked over her shoulder at Justin, who rose slowly, his expression a careful blend of politeness and thinly veiled discomfort. "Mr. Stone," he extended his hand. His grip was limp, perfunctory, gone in 2 seconds. His palm was soft, manicured, the hand of someone who had never done an honest day of physical labor. "Emily's told me so much about you. All good things, I hope?" "Of course." He offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The waitress, a college student with tired eyes and a patient smile, approached with a notepad. Justin rattled off his order quickly. Seafood tower, imported wine, appetizers. "And for you, sir." I glanced at the menu, tracing the prices like a man counting every dollar. "The chicken plate. And water, please." "Just water?" Justin's brows rose. His tone was playful on the surface, but condescending underneath. "Come on, Mr. Stone. Let me buy you a beer. Emily's father deserves more than tap water." "Water's fine, son." "Fair enough. Budget considerations, I understand." He leaned back smugly, swirling the wine list between his fingers. Emily jumped in, sensing the tension. "Dan's being modest. He worked really hard to support us." Justin smirked, eyes still on me. "I'm sure he did. But don't worry, Emily. Once we're married, you'll never have to think about money again. No more clipping coupons, no more bargain shopping." He reached across the table to squeeze her hand, his Rolex flashing under the restaurant lights. Emily flushed, embarrassed. "Justin!" "What?" he said lightly. "It's true. I can give you everything your father couldn't. Travel, designer clothes, a house in a real neighborhood." My fists clenched under the table. His words weren't spoken with malice, but with a casual cruelty born of entitlement. To him, my daughter was a project, a charity case to elevate with his wealth. The waitress returned with drinks. As she set down Justin's wine, he snapped his fingers for her attention. "Excuse me, miss, this glass has a smudge. Could you replace it? Thanks." The young woman nodded politely, but her tired eyes flickered with annoyance. I caught the look, and for a brief moment we shared an unspoken understanding. This was who Justin really was. As the meal progressed, Justin talked endlessly about his trips to Monaco, his luxury car collection, the real estate deals his parents had closed. He barely asked me a single question, and when Emily tried to steer the conversation toward her classroom, he dismissed it with a chuckle. "That's cute, honey, but teaching isn't exactly a career that builds wealth." I watched Emily's smile strain at the edges, her shoulders stiffen. She was defending him with words, but her body betrayed discomfort. When the food arrived, Justin's seafood tower dominated the table, an absurd monument to excess. Lobster juice dripped down his chin as he spoke, his gestures grand and careless. My chicken was modest, but it filled me just fine. At one point, he leaned toward me conspiratorially. "Look, Mr. Stone, I know Emily means the world to you, and I respect what you've done, raising her on limited means, but she deserves more. With me, she'll have everything she never dreamed of." He said it like a promise, but it landed like an insult. I took a slow sip of water, meeting his gaze. "Emily's had a good life." He smiled thinly. "I'm sure she has. But there's good, and then there's great." Across the table, Emily's eyes darted between us, searching for something, maybe reassurance, maybe peace. But all I could see was Catherine's face in her features, and the silent warning in my late wife's eyes. Be careful. She loves him. I forced a polite smile and set down my glass. But inside, my resolve hardened. Tonight had confirmed it. Justin Whitmore didn't love Emily for who she was. He loved the image of saving her, and I would not let my daughter become a trophy in a rich boy's collection. The weeks that followed the Bella Vista dinner blurred into months, yet the memory of Justin's smug smile never left me. I had sat quietly, dressed in my old cardigan, pretending to be a powerless retiree. And in that disguise, I'd seen the man my daughter planned to marry. Condescending, arrogant, certain that wealth was love's only true language. But Emily, she only grew more excited. Every phone call became an update about wedding colors, flowers, the string quartet Justin's mother had insisted on hiring. Her voice trembled with joy, and though I smiled and murmured my support, my chest tightened with every detail. The wedding she described sounded less like Emily's dream and more like the Whitmore family showcase. "Dad, wait until you see the banquet hall," she gushed one evening. "Crystal chandeliers, imported lilies. It looks like something out of a magazine." That sounds extravagant," I said carefully. "Extravagant?" she laughed. "Dad, it's perfect. I know it's more than I ever imagined, but Justin says I deserve it." I forced a chuckle, though bile rose in my throat. Deserve, as if love was measured in the price of a centerpiece. When the call ended, I sat in the dim light of my living room staring at Catherine's photograph. "She doesn't see it, Kat. She doesn't see how they're pulling her into their world, reshaping her into something she's not." The photo, as always, offered no reply. By summer, the wedding planning consumed every part of Emily's life. I watched from the sidelines, invited only when my presence was required, choosing a tie for family photos, signing a check for rehearsal dinner deposits. Always the retiree, never the man of means. My closet bore the proof of my double life. At one end hung my tailored suits, polished shoes, and custom shirts, armor of William Stone, billionaire businessman. At the other, my disguise, jeans, cardigans, scuffed boots. I wore the latter more often, reinforcing the illusion Emily had always believed. Each morning, I faced the mirror with the same silent question. Am I protecting her or lying to her? The answer shifted daily. One night in July, I lay awake in bed, the summer air thick and heavy. The ceiling fan whirred above me, but sleep wouldn't come. Emily had visited earlier that evening, dropping off swatches of ivory fabric for me to help choose between. She left laughing, but I saw the shadows under her eyes, the kind of exhaustion that comes from trying too hard to please too many people. I remembered Catherine's voice, soft but steady. "William, sometimes you have to let her stumble. Be there to catch her." But this wasn't a stumble. It felt like watching her walk straight into quicksand, smiling the whole way down. At 2 a.m., I rose from bed, poured myself a glass of bourbon, and sat in the darkened living room. My thoughts churned as the mantel clock ticked away the silence. If Justin was everything I feared, this wedding wasn't the beginning of a life. It was the beginning of a slow destruction. Still, Emily believed in him, believed in his kindness, his promises. To challenge that belief would only drive her closer to him. So, I played my role, the poor but proud father. The invitations arrived in August. Heavy cardstock embossed in gold, the kind of stationery that screamed old money. Mine arrived in a plain white envelope, tucked between utility bills and credit card offers. I opened it at the kitchen table, steam rising from my morning coffee. The words blurred slightly as I read them. The union of Emily Stone and Justin Whitmore. I set the card down and rubbed my temples. This was happening. Across the street, the Hendersons worked in their garden. Mr. Henderson knelt in the dirt, pulling weeds, while his wife handed him tools and laughed at his grumbling. 43 years of marriage, built on nothing but trust and companionship. That was the life I wanted for Emily. But she was marrying into marble halls and glass towers, into a family that measured worth in stock portfolios. In early September, Emily called me while driving home from a dress fitting. Her voice was light, but I heard the weariness underneath. "Dad, the Whitmores want to add another 100 guests, some business associates of theirs. I don't even know half their names. Do you think that's okay?" "Do you?" I asked gently. A pause. I guess it doesn't matter, as long as Justin's happy." The words pierced me like a blade.
My Emily, who once insisted on doing science fair projects alone because it has to be my work, was now sacrificing her joy for Justin's comfort. After the call, I sat in silence, bourbon glass untouched beside me, and made a vow. I would not interfere, but I would be ready. If Justin revealed his true self again, if he humiliated me in front of Emily or showed his arrogance too boldly, I would drop the disguise. I would let the truth of William Stone, the billionaire behind Stone Industries, burn through every lie in that gilded facade. Until then, I would endure, quietly, patiently, waiting.
Dawn broke over Bloomington on Emily's wedding day, a pale September light spilling across my bedroom. I had been awake since 4, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing lines I'd never speak. Today was supposed to be a father's proudest moment, walking his daughter down the aisle, but to me, it felt like delivering her into a gilded prison. My modest gray suit hung neatly pressed on the closet door, the same one I had worn to that dinner months ago. Threadbare at the elbows, a bit shiny at the knees, but perfect for the role I had chosen, Emily's poor but proud father. My true wardrobe, Italian suits, silk ties, handcrafted shoes, remained hidden at the back of the closet, untouched since Catherine's funeral. I shaved slowly, steadying my hand against the sink. In the mirror, my face looked every bit of my 68 years. The lines around my eyes told stories of victories and betrayals in boardrooms across the Midwest. But Emily had never known that side of me. To her, I was just Dad, retired, ordinary, unremarkable. And that was how it had to stay, for now. St. Mark's Episcopal Church had been transformed into a scene straight out of a glossy bridal magazine. White roses and lilies overflowed from crystal vases. Chandeliers rented for the day cast fractured rainbows across marble floors. The Whitmores had spared no expense, and it showed. I parked my old Camry between a Tesla and a Mercedes, the paint on my hood dull against their gleaming polish. Stepping out, I tugged at my suit jacket, acutely aware of every frayed seam. Inside, the vestibule buzzed with chatter. Emily appeared in a rush of silk and lace, her wedding dress flowing like moonlight. She was radiant, eyes sparkling beneath the weight of an elaborate veil. For a moment, my chest swelled with pure pride, the kind that no amount of wealth could purchase. "Sweetheart," I whispered, taking her trembling hands in mine. "You look absolutely radiant." Her fingers shook. "I'm so nervous, Dad. My hands won't stop shaking. Is that normal?" "Perfectly normal," I assured her, smiling as if my heart weren't breaking. "Your mother was the same way on our wedding day." Emily laughed softly, then glanced toward the entrance. "Justin's parents are running late. Their flight from Europe was delayed again." Of course, the Whitmores arrived fashionably late even to their own son's wedding. The ceremony began with organ music swelling through the church. Emily and I walked down the aisle together, each step echoing on marble. Guests rose in unison, their eyes darting between the radiant bride and the shabby man at her side. I felt their judgment, but I held my head high. Dignity was the only armor I had left. At the altar, Justin waited with a smile too wide, too practiced. His tuxedo was flawless, every detail screaming wealth. When the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" I answered firmly, "I do." Then I placed Emily's hand into Justin's, fighting the urge to snatch it back. The vows were spoken. The kiss was taken. Applause thundered through the church as the new Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore walked back down the aisle, showered in rose petals. I followed, quietly, blending into the crowd of teachers, neighbors, and distant relatives who made up my side of the aisle, simple folk in department store dresses and rented tuxedos.
On the opposite side, Justin's guests glittered in designer gowns and silk ties, the divide between our worlds as stark as the center aisle itself. The reception hall was even more opulent than the church. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and waiters in white gloves carried trays of champagne flutes. Each place setting looked like it cost more than my monthly pension, at least the one Emily believed I lived on. I had barely settled into my chair at a modest table near the back when Justin's booming voice cut across the room. He was leading his parents through introductions, chest puffed out with pride. "And over here," he declared, "is the annoying beggar we've all had to put up with." The room went silent. A fork clattered to the floor at a nearby table. A woman gasped audibly. Even Robert Whitmore shifted uncomfortably, as if embarrassed by his son's crude remark. I sat frozen, my weathered hands folded neatly on the tablecloth. My chest burned, but I kept my face calm. Dignity was the only armor I had left. Emily's cheeks flushed crimson. "Justin," she hissed. "Oh, come on," he said with a laugh. "It's a joke. He's used to it." The silence that followed was deafening. All around us, wealthy guests exchanged uneasy glances, their champagne flutes hovering in midair. My daughter's face was a portrait of humiliation, her lips trembling as she struggled to defend both her father and her new husband. I didn't speak. I didn't rise. I simply sat there, allowing the insult to hang in the air like smoke from a cheap cigar. If Justin thought he had won, if he thought he had stripped me of my dignity, he was gravely mistaken. Because justice, I knew, was patient. And tonight, justice had RSVP'd.
The laughter Justin forced into the banquet hall faded into a strained silence. His smug grin lingered, but the reaction he expected, chuckles, agreement, never came. Instead, eyes darted between me and Emily, whose face had gone pale beneath her bridal makeup. "Justin," Margaret Whitmore's voice cut through the air like a whip, sharp, disapproving. "That is hardly appropriate." "Oh, relax, Mom," he said lightly, waving his champagne flute. "He's used to it, aren't you, Mr. Stone?" His words dripped with condescension, meant to cement me in the role of tolerated nuisance. But Margaret was no longer looking at her son. Her gaze was fixed squarely on me. Her perfectly lined brows furrowed, her diamond-ringed hand rising to her chin. "Excuse me," she said slowly, her eyes narrowing as she studied my face with the precision of a seasoned negotiator. "But haven't we met before?" The room shifted. Conversation stalled mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Even the string quartet faltered, their notes wavering, before they resumed their soft melody. Justin laughed nervously. "Mom, please, you haven't met him. He's nobody, just Emily's dad." But Margaret was no longer looking at her son. Her gaze was fixed squarely on me, her perfectly lined brows furrowed, her diamond-ringed hand rising to her chin. "Oh, my God," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You're him. You're the man who bought our company." The words hit the banquet hall like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. Guests pulled out their phones, fingers flying across screens. Within seconds, whispers spread like wildfire. Stone Industries, the mysterious billionaire, the buyer who acquired 3 major firms in the last 18 months. I rose slowly from my chair, straightening my worn suit jacket. Every eye in the hall was on me. Yes, Margaret, that was me. Justin's champagne flute slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. His face drained of color. No, no, that's impossible. You live in a dump. You drive that rust bucket. You wear thrift store clothes. I met his panicked gaze. And I drank water at dinner because I don't consume alcohol with family. And I wore these clothes because I wanted to see who you were when you thought I was a nobody. The crowd murmured louder. Phones lit up with headlines and stock tickers. Even Robert Whitmore's face had gone ashen, his calculating eyes darting between me and his son as the full disaster unfolded in his mind. Margaret regained herself first. She extended her hand toward me, her polished nails trembling slightly. "Mr. Stone, we had no idea." "Of course you didn't, and that's the point. When you thought I had nothing to offer, your son showed me exactly who he was." Emily's chair scraped loudly as she stood, her wedding dress rustling like parchment. "Dad, what are you talking about? What business? What company?" I turned to her, my chest aching. "Sweetheart, I've always wanted one thing for you, a partner who cherishes you for your heart, not your bank account. Tonight, we all saw what Justin values most." Her lip trembled, the pearls at her throat rising and falling with her shallow breaths. "Dad, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just remember what you saw." The banquet hall was silent, save for the clicking of cameras and the pounding of Justin's shallow breaths. The power had shifted in an instant. He was no longer the triumphant groom basking in his family's wealth. He was a desperate man exposed before everyone he had ever wanted to impress. And I, the annoying beggar, had become the most powerful man in the room. The banquet hall remained frozen in silence, a theater of stunned faces and half-filled champagne flutes. Justin stood red-faced, tugging at his tuxedo as though straightening the fabric could somehow stitch together the dignity he had just lost. His parents hovered beside him, Margaret's expression tight with fury, Robert's jaw clenched with cold calculation. All around us, whispers rippled like wind through tall grass. Stone Industries, Billionaire, owns the Whitmores now. The wedding had become a spectacle, a headline being written in real time. Emily's trembling voice finally pierced the hush. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" Her question wasn't angry, it was broken. Her eyes searched mine, not for wealth, but for truth. I took a steadying breath. "Because I wanted you to choose love, Emily, not money, not family connections, just love. Everything I did, hiding my business, my fortune, I did so you'd never doubt whether a man wanted you for who you are, not for what you represent." Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. "But you let me believe he was different." "I hoped he was," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I prayed he was. But tonight, he showed everyone who he really is." Justin lurched forward, desperate to salvage the shreds of his reputation. "Emily, don't listen to him. He's twisting everything. I love you. You know I love you." But the words rang hollow. Every guest in the hall had witnessed Justin's arrogance, his mockery, his dismissal of her father as nothing more than an annoying beggar. Emily shook her head slowly. "Love doesn't humiliate. Love doesn't condescend. I defended you, Justin, to my father, to my friends, and this is how you treat him?" Her voice broke on the last word. Justin reached for her hand, but she pulled back as though burned. The minister who had performed the ceremony stood awkwardly near the head table, shifting from foot to foot, as though unsure whether to step in or let the scene play out. The string quartet had stopped playing entirely. In the suffocating silence, even the clink of a dropped spoon seemed deafening. I turned to Margaret and Robert. You wanted to show the world your wealth today. Instead, the world saw your legacy, and your son's behavior will stain it longer than any headline about stock acquisitions." Robert's lips thinned into a hard line. He understood the business cost of what had unfolded. Margaret said nothing, but her diamond-ringed hands trembled against her clutch. Justin's composure shattered. He dropped to his knees again, this time not before me, but before Emily. "Please, please, sweetheart, don't leave me. I can change. I'll prove myself. Just give me another chance." Gasps echoed through the room. The heir of the Whitmore fortune, kneeling on marble, begging not just for forgiveness, but for survival. Emily's tears spilled freely now. She looked at him, then at me, then at the watching crowd. And in that moment, my daughter, my sweet, trusting Emily, saw clearly for the first time. Her voice was quiet but strong. "Justin, stand up. You're embarrassing yourself." He froze, stunned as though her words had struck him harder than any blow. She turned to me, her veil trembling with the weight of her choice. "Dad, I want to go home." A murmur swept through the hall as we turned to leave. I placed a steady hand on Emily's shoulder, guiding her through the sea of stunned faces. Guests parted like water before us, whispers snapping at our heels. Some recorded on their phones, others simply stared, but none stopped us. Justin's voice rose behind us, frantic. "Emily, you can't walk out. We're married. You're my wife." She didn't look back. Neither did I. At the heavy wooden doors, I paused only long enough to cast one final glance over my shoulder. Justin stood amid the ruins of his perfect day, tie askew, face blotched with desperation, his parents at his side looking as though they had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. The chandeliers still sparkled above, the flowers still bloomed in their vases, but the grandeur of the hall had soured into something grotesque. Wealth without grace, power without dignity. I opened the door, and Emily and I stepped into the crisp night air. The drive home was quiet. Emily sat curled in the passenger seat of my old Camry, the pearls at her neck glimmering faintly in the dashboard light. Her mascara had smudged, but she didn't wipe it away. She just stared out the window, her reflection superimposed on the dark streets of Bloomington. Finally, she whispered, "Dad, thank you." "For what?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "For protecting me, for letting me see for myself." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "I only ever wanted you to be loved the way your mother loved me, with kindness, with respect, with joy." Emily squeezed back, tears slipping down her cheeks. "She would have been proud of you tonight." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "She would have been proud of you." Back at the house, the old clock ticked steadily in the silence. Emily curled up on the couch in her wedding dress, exhausted, fragile, but finally free. I draped a blanket over her shoulders and sat across from Catherine's photograph on the mantel. The silver frame caught the lamplight, her frozen smile watching over us. For the first time in years, I felt her presence, not as a haunting absence, but as a steady reassurance. We did it, Kat. We kept her safe. Emily fell asleep before midnight, her head resting against the arm of the couch, her face softened by dreams. Tomorrow would bring heartache, explanations, and the untangling of legal knots. But tonight she was home and safe. As I turned out the lights, one truth lingered above all others. Wealth can buy chandeliers, banquets, and designer suits, but it can never buy character. And character, who you are when no one is watching, is the only inheritance worth leaving behind.
Life doesn't always test us when we're prepared.
It tests us when we believe no one is watching. That's when our true character shows, more than wealth, more than reputation, more than appearances. This story isn't just about a billionaire in disguise or a spoiled son-in-law exposed. It's about the everyday reality that kindness and respect matter more than money. You can buy chandeliers, designer suits, and expensive champagne, but you can't buy humility. You can't buy love. For parents, there's another lesson here. Sometimes the hardest thing we can do is let our children learn through experience. William, the father in this story, could have stopped the wedding before it happened, but he chose patience. He chose to let Emily see who Justin really was, and when the truth revealed itself, she had the strength to walk away. For couples, the message is simple. Marriage is not a business deal. It's not about assets or appearances. It's about mutual respect, trust, and the kind of love that doesn't humiliate or manipulate. And for everyone listening, this story is a reminder. Don't underestimate people based on how they look, what car they drive, or what clothes they wear. You never know who someone really is or what they've overcome to be standing in front of you. In the end, the father's greatest wealth wasn't his billion-dollar company. It was his dignity, his wisdom, and the unconditional love he had for his daughter. If this story left you thinking about what real wealth means, then let's talk about it. Do you believe money reveals character or just hides it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I'd love to hear your perspective. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to smash that like button. It really helps more people discover these life lessons. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell, because tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. It's about a groom who abandoned his bride at the altar, only for fate to bring him face to face with her a year later in the most shocking way possible. Finally, share this video with a friend or family member who needs a reminder that respect and love are worth more than any fortune. Remember, wealth may fade, but dignity and kindness last forever. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.